So Simone Biles' husband broke the internet. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. So if you haven't been following the internet drama going along, Simone Biles, who is a Olympic gold medal gymnast, really an icon in her field, is married to Jonathan Owens, who is an NFL football player. He did an interview recently and had some things to say about their relationship, and the internet lost their minds. Now, one of the criticisms of the people who are defending Simone and Jonathan's relationship is that the people who are complaining about this interview did not watch the whole interview. They just watched short clips from the internet of some of the things that Jonathan Owens said about his wife. So I actually sat down and watched the whole interview. This is on a podcast that was primarily about football, and I listened to the whole interview. And one thing that I do want to say before I get into the relationship dynamic, I want to state that I actually do think it's a shame, as much as I am not defending what he said about Simone, and I'll get into that. I do think it's a shame that the clip of the interview where he talked about his relationship, because it was so controversial, it really overshadowed a lot of the rest of the interview, because I actually did think there were a lot of good lessons, particularly for men, in the rest of the interview, talking about the struggles with not having an easy time making it in the NFL, but actually having to work at it, having, the drive and belief in yourself to keep working at a dream that you have. A lot of talk about men's mental health, which I think was all really important. Encouraging men to seek therapy who maybe aren't used to seeking therapy. There were a lot of good things in this interview, and I think a lot of men could benefit from listening to this interview. Not the part that he talks about his wife, but that I do think that there were a lot of other life lessons in there. And I do think it's kind of a shame that there's a dark cloud around this interview having to do with a man who is really disrespecting his wife. It overshadows some of the good stuff that are lessons that I think a lot of men could benefit from in listening to this podcast interview. But I did listen to the whole interview, and just for context, Simone Biles was there in the room. She was off camera. They did show her a couple times in the interview, but she was there. Essentially, the host of the podcast kind of asked Jonathan Owens, how did you land Simone Biles? And I interpreted that, and that this is from years of working in a very male-dominated industry, so hearing men talk. I read this in a very respectful way. I think there are a lot of men who, when they say how did you get a girl like this, there's really that implication of man, you must be pretty amazing to get a woman like this, because this woman is amazing, right? It's a respect thing. So I didn't take what the host was saying to Simone Biles' husband as an insult. I interpreted it as the way that men often talk to each other, as okay, how did you land her, as a compliment of when you compliment a man's wife, in reality you're really complimenting him, because you're hey, this woman obviously thought you were good enough to be with, and that's in turn a compliment. That's how I read the situation. Other people might read it differently. However, unfortunately, Simone Biles' husband's response was not great. Some people have said he was kidding. I didn't read it as him joking. I think a lot of people, particularly women, were very offended by this. He basically was well, you should ask how she got me. And he said that he's the prize. He believes that the man is the prize. He emphasized many, many times that they met on a dating app, that she messaged him first, that she kept messaging him, that essentially she was chasing him, and that he wasn't ready, that she had to talk him into it. She's there, and she makes the comment that she's well, I see what I want, I go and I get it. And this was their dynamic. And a lot of women freaked out about that. They thought it was him being very disrespectful towards her. He also said that he didn't know who Simone Biles was, claimed he didn't know anything about gymnastics, so he didn't know who she was, but said he saw that she had a lot of followers, so he figured she must be a big deal. That's actually been debunked online, essentially because he has actually tweeted about other gymnasts in the past. There's a whole drama around this, and there's all kinds of rabbit holes that you can go down. The internet flipped out. Simone Biles has been online defending him, consistently posting her wedding photos, defending him, essentially saying she's gonna stand by him, that this is her man. And my first reaction to this situation was actually sadness, because this situation screams that there is a beautiful, talented, accomplished woman who clearly does not have the self-esteem to be with a man who actually values her. And I think that's incredibly sad. I think it's evident that it does not matter as a woman how, you know, smart, successful, beautiful, talented you are susceptible to not feeling worthy of deserving somebody great or something great, because that's really what's going on here. And I think that's really sad. And I sincerely hope that she wakes up and realizes her value and realizes that she deserves to be with someone who values her. I also know, and I've mentioned this in other videos, but I think it's something that is worth mentioning because I've had to learn this lesson a lot in life. People don't want to hear the truth until they're ready to hear it. So the reality is, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be speaking out against the way that this man was speaking about his wife at all, but we all have to realize that Simone Biles is not going to see the truth that this was disrespectful behavior and that this was not the way that a man truly honors his wife, especially publicly, but privately either. She's not going to see that until she's ready to see it. And I think that we all kind of need to accept that. We can speak about it. We can definitely point out why this is not a healthy situation, but we also need to accept that she's not going to see it until she's ready to see it. So in reality, I don't want to make this as a hit piece because a lot of people out there are just making like Simone Biles' husband hit pieces and just going after this guy, and I'm not going to do that. Do I agree with what he said? No. Do I support what he said? No. I mean, anytime we're talking about public figures, we have to acknowledge that they are human beings, and I'm only basing my observations, and everybody else really is only basing their observations on what we see publicly, and unless we know these people personally in their personal lives, we don't really know, right? And I want to acknowledge that. While I don't agree with what Simone Biles' husband was saying about her, and I don't agree with a lot of the points that he made, I'm not making this video to bash him, because that's not what this is about. What I want to focus on is the anger that a lot of women have towards what he said. And I believe at the root of that anger comes a lot of hurt, pain, and fear, particularly fear that I'm seeing that women have in ending up in a relationship like theirs. Because the reality is when we have strong reactions to relationships of public figures, in reality what we're doing is we're kind of personalizing it about ourselves. And I think it's the same kind of thing, you know, a man talking like this. Also, the trends online of men giving like really offensive vows at their wedding. You know, men smashing brides' faces into cakes or destroying cakes. The concept of the shut up ring, where a man basically like strings a woman along and then gives her a ring just to shut her up and then ends up marrying her, but is actually bitter about marrying her. He's just marrying her because he doesn't want to break up, but he's just tired of her bugging him about getting married, right? All these things are getting very popular. We're seeing this a lot online, and I think these things have always been going on. Maybe not all throughout history, but this has been going on for quite a while. The reality is, I think the root of this anger is women that have so much fear around ending up in a relationship with a man like this. So what I want to share in this video is just some lessons that I think, I mean, any of us really, but particularly women, can take away from observing the Simone Biles and her husband relationship as to how you can hopefully avoid being in that situation if that's not a relationship that you want to be in. Now, I do want to acknowledge that there absolutely are people in the world, and this goes for men and women, but particularly if I'm speaking to women and you're looking to date men, there are men in the world who absolutely will pretend to be somebody that they're not, and then when they get you, they flip the script. Women are guilty of it too, so if there are men watching and you're looking to date women, that can happen for sure. But the reality is that's why it is so important to pace a relationship, get to know someone, and actually pay attention to red flags. Because if people are pretending to be someone that they're not, there will be signs. Like, there will be indications along the way, and it's really important for us to look out for them. It doesn't justify people manipulating you. It doesn't justify people lying to you. It doesn't justify people pretending to be someone they're not. I'm not justifying that. However, it's also our own personal responsibility to protect ourselves and make sure that we don't end up in that situation. So, for starters, the man is not the prize. I think that there's a big misconception in our society that men think that they're the prize. They're not. For one thing, men are the competitors. Deep down inside of men, there is a deep sense of competition. Men are competitors. If you're a competitor, you're competing for a prize. You are not the prize. You're competing to win the prize. Men are competing for women. The reality is, as much as there's a lot of men out there that don't want to admit this, the main reason why most men do anything is because they want women. There are very wealthy men. I forget where this quote actually came from, but there was some iconically wealthy man that was sort of like, if there were no women, what would be the purpose of everything that men do? Like, there's just no purpose to it, right? We're made to be like opposites yet compatible, you know, the yin and the yang. Like, we're made that way for a reason. Women are the prize, right? Men are the protectors and providers. And one of my favorite lines, I don't know where this line originated, but it's, you know, men protect and provide for women not because they're too weak to do it themselves, but because they're so important. Men are the providers, they're the protectors, not because a woman is just a weak, fragile little, you know, delicate flower. No, it's because a woman is so important. Okay, women on this planet are so vital, but we have this whole idea in our society that men are more valuable than women, when in reality, there's not a single man on this planet that wouldn't be here if a woman had not birthed them. Now, I don't say that to dismiss all of the amazing things that men have done in the world. However, men have gotten acknowledged for doing a lot of these great things in the world. Men have gotten very wealthy and successful. Men have been put in positions of power. Women now are spending a lot of time fighting for those positions of power and to be acknowledged. And, you know, I have a lot of other videos that I talk about how much we diminish the gifts that women bring to the world, and we pretty much only value the gifts that men bring to the world, and that's a whole other conversation that I'm not going to dive into. I'm just going to say this: men are not the prize. Sorry, you're just not. Women are the prize. That's just the reality of things. Because if a man wants to be the prize, he wants to be the thing that gets won, the thing that gets pursued. He's in the feminine. He's in the feminine role, okay? He's going to attract a masculine woman. And the problem is that so many of these, like the alpha males and these guys that talk about masculinity, always want to talk about men as if they're the prize and women should be chasing them. And it's like, dude, you're literally in the feminine role. Like, you're in the, like, I'm gonna lay back and let women chase me. When in reality, the feminine role is to lean back and let the man chase them. Let the masculine pursue them. The masculine has always been the pursuers. And the feminine just is. The masculine does, the feminine is. That's basic masculine-feminine polarity. I'm not saying that women can't do things. Women can do things, we should do things. However, when it comes to relationships, masculine does, the feminine is. So if you as a man are like, I'm the prize, and you're leaning back and letting a woman pursue you, then you're in the feminine role and she is in the masculine role. I have another video too where I talk about this. This is a video from a while ago, and the reality of the situation where, you know, men will complain that women are too masculine, but if you as a man position yourself in the feminine role, you can't complain if you're attracting masculine women. If you want to attract a feminine woman, you as a man have to put yourself in the masculine role. And if you put yourself in an unhealthy or, you know, toxic or wounded masculine role of being abusive, controlling, manipulative, those kind of things are all wounded masculine, and they're wounded masculine if those traits are in men or women, mind you. This isn't an attacking men kind of thing. But if you put yourself in a wounded masculine role, you're going to attract a very wounded feminine woman who is just a woman who is probably going to let herself be abused by you. And that's not a healthy relationship dynamic either, because that kind of relationship can't last. So if men in the world want women to be more feminine, they want to attract a more feminine woman, you gotta work on being in your healthy, grounded masculine energy. It's the only way to do it. So the biggest lesson that I want women to take away from this Simone Biles situation is that Simone Biles obviously pursued her husband. She went after him. She said it. She said it in the interview. I see what I want. I go for it. That's a very modern woman way of thinking about things. And it's a problem. The problem is that many very successful women, and Simone Biles is overwhelmingly successful, in order to get to the level that she has gotten to in gymnastics, which is a very disciplined sport, right? Like, I'm sure she's had to have incredible focus, discipline, structure in her life for most of her life. In order to get to that level, she has absolutely had to have a very strong connection to her masculine energy. That's not wrong. And she's obviously done really well with it. I would never take that away from her. That said, many women, when they have a deep, deep connection to their masculine energy and become very successful with that masculine energy, they tend to get stuck in that masculine energy and are unable to connect to their feminine energy in a relationship. So they take that masculine energy, they take that focus, drive, discipline, and they translate that to their romantic relationship. And if they want a partner with a feminine partner, then that absolutely can work. However, most women deep down are going to want to be in a relationship with a masculine man who can allow them, the woman, to connect to her feminine energy in the relationship. So she doesn't have to keep that masculine energy that she has in her career in her relationship. There are exceptions to that rule, obviously, but most women are going to want that. Most women, if they find that they're very masculine in their career and they still have to be the masculine person in their relationship at home, are going to get burnt out. Which is why it is so important for a woman, when she's in her relationship mindset, when she's the wife, girlfriend, whatever, it's important for her to have a connection to her feminine energy in order to attract and to magnetize a masculine partner to her. However, many women who have so much success in their life and their career think that they can translate that, as Simone Biles said, I see what I want to go get it. In so many areas of her life, that's probably gotten her what she wanted. And it got her the husband that she wanted, obviously. However, he obviously doesn't value her as much as she really deserves to be valued, really. Because she translated her success in her career into her personal life, and it ended up magnetizing a man who was much more in his feminine, who wanted to be considered the prize. And that's why it is so important, if you're a woman and you don't want that, like you don't want that dynamic of a man who thinks that he's the prize, like you want a man who's going to value you as the feminine in the relationship, you're gonna have to learn to transition from your masculine career self into your feminine self in your relationship. It's not an easy thing to do. It's possible. And that's why I do get a lot of women that will ask me, like, can a woman be in, you know, their feminine energy and, you know, magnetize a masculine man if she's the breadwinner, or if she, you know, makes more money than a man, or if she's wildly successful? I get questions like that. Yes, it's possible. It is. But there's usually a lot of hurdles to that, because oftentimes when women see a lot of career success being in their masculine energy, which is not wrong, and I'm not discouraging women from having that. However, oftentimes women believe that they can just translate that success into their personal relationships, and that typically doesn't work. I talk about masculine feminine polarity, and I have a lot of other videos talking about that, so I'm not going to dive into the details of that, but I do get a lot of people like, what if I don't want that? If you don't want that, that's fine. You're not going to have a sexually polarized relationship if you don't have the masculine feminine dynamic. And if you as a woman really want to be the masculine in your relationship and you're okay with a more feminine man, that's fine too. I'm not telling you what to have. However, the majority of women are not going to be happy that way. The majority of women are going to want to be the feminine in their relationship, and they're going to want a masculine partner. And I'm not going to dive into like all the ways that you can go from being in your masculine in your career to being in your feminine in your relationship in this video, because that would take all day. And there are ways to do it. It's just, usually if women do have a lot of success in their career in their masculine, it's usually because they have blockages to being in their feminine. So that transition, while possible, can often be challenging for many women. This is the reason why I always tell women, never message first. Never chase the man, never pursue the man. I don't care if you want him. I don't care if you desire him. I don't care if you're like, oh, I'm a go-getter. Oh, I take what I want. Never. I don't believe a woman should ever make the first move. Absolutely not. Never make the first move. Let the man come to you. If he doesn't come to you, he's not your man. I know there's a lot of women that don't like that. I know there's a lot of women who are going to say, oh, I approached my man first and we've been married for whatever. Don't care. It is not a good move. You're never going to get a good relationship if you as the woman are pursuing the man. That is where you end up getting into men humiliating you publicly, whether it be in public interviews, in vows, in smashing cake in your face, in shut-up rings. If you pursue the man and you're pushing the man and you're going after him and you're chasing him, that's how you get yourself into these situations. As a woman, you need to lean back, you need to let the man come to you. If he doesn't come to you, he's not yours. I should also point out that it's amazing how many people are so quick to point out. I think because Jonathan Owens, one thing I will give him is he's very vocal about it. Like, he's basically admitting publicly that he was clout chasing. He's pretty much admitting that he's insecure about the fact that she's more famous than him, and he's using the opportunity to kind of dismiss her fame and her accomplishments. And this is exactly what I was telling people that Travis Kelce is very likely to be doing to Taylor. He's just less vocal about it. And again, I don't want to get into Taylor and Travis, but like, we need to be careful of not assuming that just because a man is not saying this publicly, that that's not what he's feeling. Most men are going to be intimidated by women who are more successful than them. Maybe not every man, but the vast majority of men are going to be intimidated by that. And they're going to be uncomfortable with that because most men are going to feel like, even if as a woman, because obviously Simone Biles even said that one day people are not going to be calling him Simone Biles' husband. They're going to be calling her Jonathan Owens' wife. She's trying so hard to boost him up because I think she knows that he's deep down resenting her for that stuff. It's not going to work because too many men, even if a woman tries to not let that emasculate him, most men are going to see that as emasculating. It's life. And there's nothing that she can do specifically to change that. And she's obviously trying to make accommodations for that. Like, she's desperately trying to like lift him up so he doesn't feel that way. Is it impossible for men to be okay with a woman who is, you know, so much more successful than him? It's possible. It's just not that likely. And it's definitely not possible for just like the average guy. Most guys are going to have to do like really deep inner work to get to that place. You can have an imbalance of success in a relationship if you're in like totally different fields, like totally unrelated fields. You're not both in a celebrity situation. You know, like I've used the comparison between George and Amal Clooney. Granted, he is the more famous one, but she is clearly the more successful in like a more important vital career. But yet she's not really in celebrity world. Like, she's not trying to be famous. She's okay with the fame that comes from being with George Clooney, at least publicly it seems like she is. But they're not really competing for fame, so to speak, because he's in the fame world and she's in this, you know, the world of success in other areas. That was my issue with like the Taylor Travis thing, is like, yes, she's music, he's sports, but they're both in the fame world and they're both going to end up competing for fame. And in a situation with like Simone Biles and Jonathan Owens, you're gonna have a difficulty because even though they're in different areas of athleticism, and she's kind of winding down her career and his career is kind of still going, because of her overwhelming level of success, it's only gonna highlight his insecurities about not being at that level of success. That's not abnormal. I don't think that he's handling it well based on what he's saying about her. I think that their relationship is gonna have a lot of problems unless they really deal with this situation. However, most men are gonna have issues with that. It's just because men's worth is so defined in their success, in their accomplishments, that a woman being more accomplished is most likely going to be, it's gonna feel emasculating to a man even if she's not specifically attempting to emasculate him. He mentioned several times in that interview about people like handing him a camera and wanting like a picture with her. I gotta be honest with you, that happened to me one time actually. I was talking to a woman who I had like started out with in stand-up comedy, and she kind of got a name for herself, and her and I are talking, and this guy came up and was like, can I get a picture? And here I am thinking he wanted a picture of like both of us, because we were actually both performing in a stand-up show that night, when actually he like handed me the camera and like wanted a picture with her. And this isn't even a romantic relationship. This was literally just like, oh. Like, it's awkward. It's awkward. And to be married to somebody like that, especially if you're somebody who is, you know, working towards accomplishing dreams and goals, it's tough. I don't love the way that he's handling this publicly, but I can also understand where that would be uncomfortable. Now, the main thing that people are not pointing out about this interview that I think needs to be said, and I think part of it is because it's not something you can get from the short clips of the things that he said. There's a lot of people going around saying, okay, Simone Biles is just not his dream girl. And if you're just not a man's dream girl, it does not matter who you are, how successful, beautiful, talented, anything. If you're not a man's dream girl, you're just not the one. And I don't really get caught up too much in like the dream girl thing, because I think, as I've said in other videos, the dream girl thing can often be a fantasy that doesn't translate into reality. So I don't really focus too much on the concept of being a man's dream girl, because I think that can be a blessing and a curse. I think you have to worry about that, especially if you are talking about a man's physical ideal for a dream girl. The thing that this interview if you watch the whole interview, the thing I took away from this that I really want women to understand is if a man does not feel like he has reached a certain level of accomplishment in his life, which is going to vary from man to man, but if he doesn't feel like he has found his purpose and he has reached a certain level, whatever level that is in his mind, of accomplishment, he is not going to be ready to settle down in a relationship with you. It doesn't matter if you're his dream girl. It doesn't matter if you're the one. He might marry you, but he's not really going to be fully ready to commit to you, like fully. Even if you have wedding rings, even if you say vows, even if you make that commitment, he's not really going to be fully ready to commit to a relationship with you, like in his heart, if he is not where he wants to be in his life. And the thing that I got from this interview is you have a man who talks about all the times he's felt lost, all the times he's struggled, and that's all admirable. I mean, it's admirable that he is actually actively working towards something that he wants to do. But he's still in that area of trying to work on what his purpose is, like what his greater purpose is in life. He's still in that process. He's never going to fully be in 100% with any woman until he reaches that point. A masculine man needs to have a purpose, and his purpose is something that's greater than himself. It's not like, oh, I just like to go skiing, or oh, I just, I like to play video games or something. It's a purpose that is greater than himself. It's what he is on this earth to do. It's his greater purpose. It's serving something higher than himself, and that's not just a religious thing, that's not just a spiritual thing, it's it's something that is outside of himself. It's something that he's bringing to the world. In this situation with Simone Biles' husband, he really doesn't seem like he's actually settled in and found his purpose. He obviously wants to play football. He's on a drive to play football, and when he said that, she had to talk him into it because he wasn't ready for a relationship, it doesn't necessarily mean that she wasn't the woman he wanted. It's a little hard to tell based on the interview. There's a good chance she might not really be the woman that he wanted originally, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, she pursued him and he wasn't ready because he didn't have his purpose yet. If you look at men who, are giving the shut up rings, right? They're dragging a woman along for 10 years and stuff, and they have kids and he's still not ready to settle down and commit, and he eventually gives her the shut up ring. It's probably because he doesn't have a purpose. He doesn't know his purpose in life. He doesn't know his greater purpose, and men are never gonna fully be able to settle down and commit to you until they find that greater purpose. When he finds that and is ready, may not be when you yourself are ready to settle down. It's the root behind the horrible vows that men are giving nowadays, the smashing the cake in the face. All that comes down to is, well, a lot of it's juvenile. A lot of it's just absolutely juvenile, childish behavior, which goes along with not having a purpose in life. If a man has a greater purpose in life, he's not going to do juvenile, immature things because he's going to have a greater purpose, like something that he is pursuing, something that is greater than himself. And usually when men find that and they find that purpose, they're going to want to partner with a woman who is in support of that greater purpose. I mean, and that can vary from man to man. But in reality, if a man's greater purpose in life is to, I don't know, he has to spend half of the year in India and half of the year in California because whatever his purpose is, he's going to need to partner with a woman who's going to be in support of that. That's just what it has to be. If that's his greater purpose, he needs to be with a woman who, can either go with him to both places or can live in one place and then hold down the fort while he's in another place. I've said this before in my video about Tom and Giselle. Tom Brady had a purpose. He had a goal. If you look at his overall, his TB12 brand that he had, which was all based in helping people to stay healthy later in life. It's not like burning yourself out when you're young to get the perfect physique. It was all about health and a sustainable way to be as mobile and healthy as possible later in life. So him playing football for a long career fit that greater purpose. It fit that message that his whole brand, like what his goal and his purpose in life was. it was playing football as long as he could, potentially. He was gonna need to be with a woman who was in full support of that. So him having a wife who was like, no, you need to retire now, and was pressuring him to retire, and I know there's a lot of stuff about Tom and Giselle. I have a whole video about that. You can go watch that video for more about that. But him being in a relationship with a woman who resents him for having that long a football career doesn't match up with his purpose. No matter what a man's purpose is, and his purpose, for one thing, is gonna have to be greater than himself, so it's not a selfish purpose. It's also not gonna be like a corrupt or, you know, illegal, or, again, it's not a selfish or destructive purpose. A man's true purpose is gonna be something that is greater than himself and in support of the highest good of all, right? Whatever that is, and it can vary greatly depending on the man. But until he finds that purpose and he's on that path, he's really not going to be able to settle down in partnership, because he's not going to be fully living out his true masculine purpose. That's an important aspect of a man going from boyhood to manhood, is finding that purpose. If a man is actually like in a relationship with you or committing to you and he's just sort of lost, he hasn't really found himself, he's struggling, he doesn't really know his direction, he doesn't have that purpose, that drive for something greater than himself, he's not going to be ready to fully commit to you. And I don't say that to women to be like, oh, just sit around and wait. Maybe you need to leave, because maybe you being there in that situation, because maybe you being there and just saying, okay, yeah, I'll just be here with you while you're figuring this out, it might be distracting him from finding his purpose. Like a real man, like a real masculine man, is going to understand that just having women around him, just having a woman around him, if he hasn't found his purpose, is really a distraction. He's gonna probably resent you for being there, because it's not going to be in support of his purpose, because he needs to find that himself. We can't find it for them as women. Once a man has found his purpose and is on that direction, it's a little bit different, because then if having a wife and a family is gonna be in support of that, then that's great. For some men, having a wife and family isn't going to be in support of his greater purpose, and that's okay too. In the same way that it's okay if women decide to not have kids in a family, because some women may put a purpose above relationships. Most women are not going to be happy putting purpose above relationships and family and things like that, because for most feminine women, that's not how we're wired. However, for a man to fully be in his masculine, he's going to need to have found his purpose, and he's not going to be comfortable settling down before that. And that, I think, should be the biggest lesson that women need to take away from the Simone Biles and her husband situation, is if a man tells you he's not ready, he's not ready. And we can't get him ready. Now, if you're like, okay, I don't want to spend my whole life single, I don't want to be 10 years in a relationship, you have to know when is the point of saying like, okay, if he's not ready now, or he's not actively getting ready, if I don't actually see progress here, I'm gonna have to walk away. That's an important thing. I think as women, we need to value our own selves and our own time to be like, okay, I'm in a relationship with this man, I'm looking to have marriage and a family, and you know, is he actively pursuing his purpose, or is he just kind of going with the flow? Is he going with emotions? Is he being lazy? What is he doing? If he's actively trying to find his purpose, then you can decide whether or not you actually think that this man is worth giving him a little bit more time or not. But if he's not even actively pursuing his purpose, or actively trying to find it, or actively working towards it, he's never really going to be able to fully commit to you. And that's just a really important lesson. I think that should be the biggest lesson. If you can take away anything from this whole Simone Biles, Jonathan Owens debacle here, first of all, I actually think that more men should listen to that interview. Not the parts where he talks about his wife, because I don't think that that's an acceptable thing. But I think there's a lot of good information about men like not giving up, seeking therapy, and working on your mental health, and working on your physical health and things like that. The stuff where he's talking about his wife, not so healthy, but I think that there's something there at the root of that, right? He was lost. He wasn't really figuring himself out, and he really wasn't ready to fully commit to any woman, really, probably, because he himself had not found his direction. Ladies, even if you are massively successful in your career and that drive and focus has gotten you a lot of success in your life, you cannot translate that to your romantic life if you're looking to attract a masculine man. It just doesn't work like that. So please, ladies, when it comes to your romantic life, please do not pursue men. Do not chase after men. If a man tells you he doesn't want you, please listen to him. If he's not pursuing you, he's just not yours. He's not your man. You know, he's just not your person. If a man thinks he's the prize, he's in his feminine. If you're looking for a masculine man, don't go after men who think they're the prize. It's just not worth it. And a masculine man is gonna have drive and direction. He's gonna have purpose. And as a woman, you need to make sure that he is found his purpose, he's actively pursuing his purpose. Doesn't necessarily have to, you know, be at the top of the game or anything, but he has to be actively pursuing his purpose. Make sure that you respect his purpose. The thing that men need more than anything else in a relationship is respect. And if you as a woman cannot respect a man and respect what he's doing and respect his purpose, don't waste his time. Just don't. Like, move on, because he's wasting your time, you're wasting his time if you're incapable of giving him that respect. But if he's not actively pursuing that purpose, please know he's not going to be ready to be in a relationship with you. For women, I don't want you to live in fear of a shut up ring, or in fear that you're going to end up with a man who's going to publicly humiliate you or something. I don't want you to live in fear of that, because in reality, there are ways that you can empower yourself to not put yourself in that situation. There are people who are going to pretend to be somebody else, and you may end up in a situation with someone, but if you have enough trust in yourself that this is not what you want, that you don't want a man who's going to publicly embarrass you, that you don't want a man who's going to give, like, you know, horrific vows. And I'm not saying Jonathan Owens did that, or that he smashed cake in her face or anything. I don't know that much about their actual wedding. But those are like trending topics and things that I'm noticing women are very afraid of. And I want women to know that you don't have to tolerate that. If you start noticing signs of disrespect from a man, if you start noticing signs of a man diminishing your accomplishments, the subtle insults, I know that couples can kind of, you know, make fun of each other and then kind of poke fun at each other, but if you're noticing that those insults are getting more abusive, if you're noticing a lot of like rough housing that's getting more and more aggressive, those are all warning signs. Those are all warning signs, and I want women to know more about those warning signs so that you can hopefully avoid those warning signs getting so much worse. It is so important for everybody really, but I'm particularly speaking to women, of really paying attention to who the person is you're in the relationship with, because oftentimes behaviors like this don't come from out of nowhere. Like, I'm sure that Simone Biles is not hearing that her husband thinks he's the prize for the first time in that interview. I'm sure that she knew she pursued him. She admitted she pursued him. I'm sure that many of the women who are experiencing these men who are publicly disrespecting them, the warning signs were there. And it's really easy for us to put blinders on when we don't want to believe something's happening, but I want to encourage more women to really pay attention to the warning signs, because that's the only way we can protect ourselves, is to really pay attention to the warning signs, to not get so focused on this goal of, I want to get married and it has to be this man. I'm going to have a family and I'm going to have babies and it has to be this man and it has to be now, and to not get so focused on that, because when you get focused on that, you tend to put blinders on. You don't see all the stuff that's happening around. You don't see the subtle signs that this man may be not ready for a relationship. This man may not be ready for marriage. He may not be ready for family and kids. You need to pay attention to that as women. It's hard because it's easy for women to get caught up in, you know, the fairy tale romance of it, or, you know, just wanting to be with somebody and not wanting to be alone, and there's so many different reasons for that. But I just encourage women to just keep your eyes open, because I don't want to see women get hurt like this. I don't want to see men get hurt in relationships either. Like, this isn't just a you know, some kind of a man bashing thing. It's just that I'm speaking primarily to women, but I don't want to see men get into relationships with, you know, with people that they're not compatible with either. And, you know, and men are guilty of it too. Men very often, as I've mentioned in other videos, will put blinders on and see a woman that they're very attracted to and not actually pay attention to, is this woman in the support of my higher purpose? Just get caught up in, you know, her looks or her some kind of a status or something, and not pay attention to that. And that's important too. Like, I want to see people connect in relationships and have good, solid, healthy relationships, you know, from a really heart connected place where both people can be fulfilled and get what they want. So yeah, that was the purpose of this video. If you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and be sure you subscribe to my channel. If you're a woman watching who would like to learn more about feminine energy, I have a book about dark feminine energy, and I also have online courses. Details are in the description box below, along with links to all my social media accounts. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.